May 5th, 1945. The Maida Escarpment, Okinawa. The air is thick with cordite, the metallic tang of blood, and the suffocating humidity of the Pacific. You are here, crouched in the mud and shattered coral at the base of a sheer 400-foot cliff, a place the soldiers of the 77th Infantry Division have grimly nicknamed Hacksaw Ridge. It is a fortress carved by nature and perfected by the Imperial Japanese Army. Above you, the lip of the escarpment is a jagged line against a steel-gray sky, a line that Company B of the 1st Battalion, 307th Infantry Regiment, must cross. You see the men, their faces smeared with grime and sweat, knuckles white around the stocks of their M1 Garins and Browning automatic rifles. They are ghosts already, haunted by the weeks of relentless island fighting. The objective is the plateau, a flat, barren killing field dotted with shattered tree stumps and defended by an invisible network of machine gun nests, mortar pits, and interlocking caves. The only way up is a series of cargo nets, swaying precariously against the rock face, lashed together by combat engineers under a curtain of enemy fire just days before. The order comes down the line, not as a shout, but as a series of urgent gestures and strained whispers. It is time. A thunderous artillery barrage from the American lines falls upon the ridge, shaking the very earth beneath your feet, a deafening drumbeat meant to suppress the defenders. Then, silence, a terrifying momentary void before the assault begins. Men surge forward, hitting the nets, their boots struggling for purchase on the coarse rope. They climb, exposed and vulnerable, a human ladder ascending into hell. Among them, you see a soldier moving with a different kind of purpose. He carries no rifle, no sidearm, only 2 aid kits strapped to his belt and a larger medical satchel slung over his shoulder. This is Private First Class Desmond Doss, the company medic, a Seventh-day Adventist, and a conscientious objector who came to war to save lives, not to take them. As the first soldiers clear the top, the world erupts. The plateau is a hornet's nest. Japanese machine guns hidden behind steel plates and coral pillboxes open up with a ferocious chatter, their crossfire stitching lines of death across the open ground. Mortar rounds scream down, turning earth and men into plumes of red mist and black smoke. The men of Company B fan out, seeking any scrap of cover, firing desperately at an enemy they cannot see. They fight with grim determination, pressing forward yard by bloody yard. In the roar of battle, individual stories are often lost, swallowed by the greater narrative of war. It is why we work to keep these memories alive, and by subscribing you ensure that the courage of men like this is never forgotten. Suddenly, the ground trembles with a new intensity. From hidden positions, the Japanese launch their counterattack. Banzai charges, waves of soldiers pouring from spider holes and camouflage tunnels, their bayonets fixed, their cries piercing the cacophony. The American line, already stretched thin, buckles. Then it breaks. The command to pull back screams through the chaos. It is a full retreat, a desperate scramble back toward the cargo nets and the relative safety of the cliff's edge. Men fall, cut down by the relentless fire. They are left where they lie, trapped in the open, their calls for a medic swallowed by the din of annihilation. The able-bodied throw themselves over the side, sliding and falling down the nets. The last man disappears over the edge, and an eerie quiet begins to settle over the ridge, punctuated only by the groans of the wounded and the distant, triumphant shouts of the enemy. The plateau belongs to the Japanese once more, but not everyone has retreated. One lone figure silhouetted against the smoke-filled sky remains. For a long moment there is only the wind whistling over the lip of the escarpment and the low, agonized chorus of the dying. Private First Class Desmond Doss lies flat against the churned earth, his heart hammering against his ribs, the smell of gunpowder and blood thick in his nostrils. Below, his company has vanished. Above, the Japanese soldiers consolidate their position, their voices sharp and guttural as they move among the shell craters, finishing off any American soldier who still shows signs of life. You can feel the terror of that moment, the primal instinct screaming at him to get out, to follow his comrades over the edge, and back to safety. It is the only sane thing to do. He is one man, unarmed, on a plateau now swarming with the enemy. To stay is suicide. But then a sound cuts through his fear. a faint cry that finds him across the battlefield. "Medic!" It is a plea he has answered 100 times before, but never like this. Not when he is the only one left to hear it. He presses his face into the dirt, his mind a maelstrom of faith and terror. He prays, not for his own safety, but for guidance. The words come to him in a whisper, a desperate bargain made with God on the edge of the world. "Lord, please help me get one more. Just one more." He repeats it like a mantra, a shield against the overwhelming hopelessness. The prayer steels his resolve. He is not a soldier of war, but a soldier of mercy, and his war is not over. Slowly, carefully, he pushes himself up, a lone silhouette against the dying light. He crawls on his belly, keeping low, moving from one shattered tree stump to the next, his eyes scanning the carnage. He sees them everywhere, the still forms of his friends and the writhing shapes of those clinging to life. A Japanese patrol passes less than 30 feet away, their Arisaka rifles held at the ready, their bayonets gleaming. Doss freezes, becoming part of the broken landscape, holding his breath until his lungs burn. They do not see him. The moment they pass, he is moving again, scuttling toward the nearest cry. He finds a man from Georgia, a corporal named Joe, with a grievous wound in his leg and chest. The man's eyes are wide with shock and pain. "I thought you were all gone," he gasps. "I am still here," Doss whispers back, his hands already at work. He pulls out a morphine syringe, plunging it into the man's thigh to dull the pain. With practiced efficiency, he applies sulfa powder to the wounds to stave off infection and wraps them tightly with battle dressings from his aid kit. These individual acts of compassion, performed in the heart of enemy territory, are the moments that define a hero. We believe it is our duty to document these acts, and if you agree, we ask you to subscribe to help us continue this mission. Now, the hardest part begins. The escarpment edge is 50 yards away, an eternity of open ground. Doss cannot carry the corporal. He positions the wounded man on his back and begins to crawl, dragging the dead weight behind him inch by agonizing inch. Every scrape of his boots on the coral rock, every grunt of exertion sounds like a thunderclap in the tense quiet. He expects a shout, a rifle shot, the sudden, sharp pain of a bayonet at any second. But none comes. He reaches the edge of the cliff, his muscles screaming, his uniform soaked in sweat and blood. Below, the men of Company B look up in disbelief. A figure has appeared at the top. They think it is a Japanese soldier, and rifles are raised before an officer realizes what is happening. Doss has found a length of rope, discarded during the assault, anchored to a sturdy tree stump. With hands that shake from exhaustion, he ties a series of bowline knots, fashioning a makeshift rope litter. He secures it around the corporal's chest and legs, whispers a word of reassurance, and begins to lower him, hand over hand, down the sheer rock face to the waiting arms below. The first man is safe. Doss watches for a moment, then turns back toward the killing field. His work has just begun. For a long moment, there is only the wind whistling over the lip of the escarpment and the low, agonized chorus of the dying. Private First Class. Desmond Doss lies flat against the churned earth, his heart hammering against his ribs, the smell of gunpowder and blood thick in his nostrils. Below, his company has vanished. Above, the Japanese soldiers consolidate their position, their voices sharp and guttural as they move among the shell craters, finishing off any American soldier who still shows signs of life. You can feel the terror of that moment, the primal instinct screaming at him to get out, to follow his comrades over the edge and back to safety. It is the only sane thing to do. He is one man, unarmed, on a plateau now swarming with the enemy. To stay is suicide. But then a sound cuts through his fear, a faint cry that finds him across the battlefield. "Medic!" It is a plea he has answered 100 times before, but never like this. Not when he is the only one left to hear it. He presses his face into the dirt, his mind a maelstrom of faith and terror. He prays, not for his own safety, but for guidance. The words come to him in a whisper, a desperate bargain made with God on the edge of the world. "Lord, Please help me get one more. Just one more. He repeats it like a mantra, a shield against the overwhelming hopelessness. The prayer steels his resolve. He is not a soldier of war, but a soldier of mercy. And his war is not over. Slowly, carefully, he pushes himself up, a lone silhouette against the dying light. He crawls on his belly, keeping low, moving from one shattered tree stump to the next, his eyes scanning the carnage. He finds them everywhere, the still forms of his friends and the writhing shapes of those clinging to life. A Japanese patrol passes less than 30 feet away, their Arisaka rifles held at the ready, their bayonets gleaming. Doss freezes, becoming part of the broken landscape, holding his breath until his lungs burn. They do not see him. The moment they pass, he is moving again, scuttling toward the nearest cry. He finds a man from Georgia, a corporal named Joe, with a grievous wound in his leg and chest. The man's eyes are wide with shock and pain. "I thought you were all gone," he gasps. "I am still here," Doss whispers back, his hands already at work. He pulls out a morphine syringe, plunging it into the man's thigh to dull the pain. With practiced efficiency, he applies sulfa powder to the wounds to stave off infection and wraps them tightly with battle dressings from his aid kit. These individual acts of compassion, performed in the heart of enemy territory, are the moments that define a hero. We believe it is our duty to document these acts, and if you agree, we ask you to subscribe to help us continue this mission. Now, the hardest part begins. The escarpment edge is 50 yards away. An eternity of open ground. Doss cannot carry the corporal. He positions the wounded man on his back and begins to crawl, dragging the dead weight behind him, inch by agonizing inch. Every scrape of his boots on the coral rock, every grunt of exertion sounds like a thunderclap in the tense quiet. He expects a shout, a rifle shot, the sudden sharp pain of a bayonet at any second. But none comes. He reaches the edge of the cliff, his muscles screaming, his uniform soaked in sweat and blood. He has found a length of rope, discarded during the assault, anchored to a sturdy tree stump. With hands that shake from exhaustion, he ties a series of bowline knots, fashioning a makeshift rope litter. He secures it around the corporal's chest and legs, whispers a word of reassurance, and begins to lower him, hand over hand, down the sheer rock face to the waiting arms below. The first man is safe. Doss watches for a moment, then turns back toward the killing field. His work has just begun. Dusk bleeds across the Okinawan sky, painting the clouds in bruised shades of purple and orange. The failing light is both a blessing and a curse. It offers Desmond Doss the cloak of shadows, but also threatens to hide the very men he is trying to find. He pushes himself away from the cliff's edge and crawls back into the landscape of death, his movements slow and deliberate. His world has shrunk to the next 10 yards, the next shell crater, the next fallen comrade. The thunder of the earlier battle has been replaced by an unnerving quiet, a stillness broken only by the whimpers of the wounded and the whisper of the wind. The mantra begins again in his mind, a silent, rhythmic prayer against the encroaching darkness. Lord, help me get one more. He moves past the bodies of Japanese soldiers, their forms rigid in death, and the twisted metal of their Nambu light machine guns. His senses are on fire. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of the wind through the sawgrass sounds like the footstep of an enemy patrol. Twice, he flattens himself into the mud as Japanese soldiers sweep the area, their flashlights cutting sharp beams through the gloom. He lies motionless among the dead, his face pressed against the cool earth, forcing his breathing to be shallow and silent. The soldiers pass, their voices a low murmur, their minds convinced that no American could have survived the onslaught. They do not know a ghost is walking among them. He finds another soldier, a private from the 3rd Platoon, pinned beneath the weight of a dead comrade, a piece of shrapnel embedded deep in his side. The man is fading, his words a faint gurgle. Doss works with a desperate urgency, his hands sure and steady despite the trembling in his arms. He eases the dead weight off the wounded man, applies a pressure dressing to slow the bleeding, and administers a syringe of morphine. Then begins the agonizing journey back to the rope. He cannot drag this one. The man's wound is too severe. Instead, he fashions a crude carrier out of an ammunition belt and a torn piece of poncho, pulling the man a few feet at a time in a grueling stop-and-start crawl. Each rescue was a full-body ordeal, demanding a level of physical and mental endurance that seems impossible for one man. This unyielding dedication to his fellow soldiers, repeated hour after hour, is a testament to the human spirit we are committed to honoring. By subscribing, you become a guardian of these legacies. He reaches the escarpment and secures the soldier to the rope, his raw hands burning with each pass of the coarse hemp. He lowers him into the darkness, listening for the faint call from below that signals the man is safe. Then he turns back. It is now full night. The plateau is a maze of shifting shadows. It is in this profound darkness that he finds his own company commander, Captain Jack Glover, his leg shattered by machine gun fire, unable to move. This was an officer who had once tried to have Doss discharged from the army for his conscientious objection. Now, the captain looks up from the dirt, his face pale in the faint starlight, and sees the one man he believed had no place in a combat zone standing over him. "Doss! I thought you were dead," Glover rasps. "I am not leaving you here, sir," Doss replies, his voice steady. The medic treats the captain's wounds with the same gentle care he has given all the others. Then, he secures him for the long drag back to the cliff's edge. He works through the night, a solitary specter on a haunted ridge, guided by his faith in the fading cries of the wounded. One man against an army, fueled by a simple, impossible prayer. The night offers no rest, only a different kind of war fought against exhaustion and despair. After lowering Captain Glover into the waiting arms of his men, Desmond Doss does not pause. He turns back from the precipice, his body a symphony of pain. His shoulders burn, his back aches, and the skin on his palms has been rubbed raw by the coarse rope. Each journey into the darkness is a fresh act of faith. The hours melt together, a long, seamless stretch of crawling, listening, treating, and dragging. He loses count. Is this the 10th man? The 15th? The number does not matter. All that matters is the next cry, the next shallow breath, the next life he can pull back from the abyss. You are there in the silence with him, between the rescues. You feel the grit of the coral beneath his stomach, the chilling dampness of the Okinawan dew soaking through his fatigues. The moon is a pale sliver, offering just enough light to distinguish the silhouettes of the dead from the slumped forms of the living. He finds a soldier with both legs mangled by a mortar blast, another with a belly wound that Doss knows is fatal but treats anyway, giving the man morphine and a moment of comfort in his final minutes. He does not discriminate between those he thinks will make it and those he does not. Every man is a soul in need. Suddenly, a series of sharp cracks echo from the Japanese lines, followed by the terrifying whistle of incoming mortar rounds. They are firing blindly, harassing the American positions below, but their shells fall perilously close to the cliff's edge. One explodes less than 40 yards from where Doss is tending to a wounded bar gunner, showering them both with dirt and rock fragments. He instinctively throws his body over the injured man, shielding him from the debris, his own steel helmet ringing from a stray piece of shrapnel. The barrage is short, a random act of violence in the dead of night. When it ends, Doss continues his work as if uninterrupted. His actions were witnessed only by the stars and the men he saved, one life at a time. It is this quiet, relentless heroism far from the grand strategies of generals that forms the true heart of the conflict. By subscribing, you support our effort to bring these profoundly personal stories out of the shadows of history. He finds another soldier far out on the plateau, a lieutenant who had been left for dead, unconscious and bleeding from a head wound. The man is heavy, and the journey back is the most grueling yet. Doss's muscles scream in protest. His vision tunnels, his breath comes in ragged gasps. The voice of self-preservation whispers in his ear. You have done enough. Go down the rope. Save yourself. But another voice, born of his unwavering faith, pushes it away. Lord, help me get one more, he pants, the words a vapor in the cold night air. He reaches the rope anchor, his strength all but gone. He summons a final reserve, tying the intricate knots with fingers that feel like clumsy clubs, and lowers the lieutenant into the safety of the darkness below. As he prepares to turn back one more time, he notices a change in the sky. A faint gray line has appeared on the eastern horizon, a sign that the long night is almost over. Dawn is coming. With the light will come visibility, and with visibility, certain death. He knows he has only minutes left before the plateau becomes a brightly lit stage, and he is the only actor on it. The gray line on the horizon hardens into a blade of pale, unforgiving light, slicing through the darkness. It creeps across the plateau, revealing the true, horrific scale of the previous day's carnage. What was a landscape of indistinct shadows is now a brutal tableau of twisted bodies, shattered weapons, and blood-soaked earth. You can see every detail with stark clarity: the discarded helmets, the unspent M1 clips scattered in the mud, the serene, pale faces of the dead. For Private First Class Desmond Doss, this light is a death sentence. To be caught in the open now is to be executed. The instinct for survival, suppressed for 12 agonizing hours, screams at him to take the rope, to slide down into the safety of the ravine where his company waits. He is poised at the cliff's edge, his body a single throbbing ache, his mind numb with fatigue. But as the sun's first rays touch the ridge, he hears it. Or perhaps he feels it. A faint, rhythmic tapping sound from a shell hole some 60 yards away. It is not the wind. It is deliberate. Someone is still out there, trying to signal, too weak to call out. The choice is made in an instant. There is no choice. He cannot leave. He pushes himself away from the safety of the escarpment and begins to crawl back into the kill zone, his mantra a near inaudible whisper on his lips. Lord, help me get one more. This is a different kind of movement. It is no longer the stealthy crawl of the night. This is a desperate, low-profile scramble from one piece of cover to the next under the full gaze of the enemy. He feels 1,000 eyes on him. From the interlocking caves and pillboxes that honeycomb the ridge, the Japanese defenders are stirring. The first sign comes as a sharp crack, and the air next to his helmet sizzles. A sniper. The bullet kicks up a spray of coral and dirt, stinging his cheek. He freezes, flattening himself so completely he feels like he is merging with the earth. He waits, 1 minute, 2. Then he moves again, a few feet at a time, his path a zigzag of desperation. To knowingly re-enter the field of fire, to trade the certainty of escape for the slim chance of saving one more life, is an act of almost unimaginable bravery. We feel a profound responsibility to ensure such deeds are never lost to time. Your subscription to this channel helps us build a permanent record of their valor. He reaches the shell crater and peers over the edge. Inside is a sergeant from Company B, his leg nearly severed by an artillery shell, using a bayonet to tap against his helmet. The man's face is a mask of dried blood and dirt, his eyes delirious with pain. He looks at Doss as if seeing an apparition. They told me. Everyone was gone, the sergeant croaks. Almost everyone, Doss says, already pulling out his last battle dressing. As he works, another shot rings out, this one striking the lip of the crater, showering them with debris. The Japanese sniper has him zeroed in. They have to move now. There is no time for a slow, careful drag. Doss hoists the sergeant onto his back in a fireman's carry, a feat of pure adrenaline-fueled strength. He rises into a low crouch and runs, stumbling and weaving across the open ground, a clear target against the morning sky. Bullets whip past him, a swarm of angry hornets. He can hear the chatter of a Nambu machine gun opening up, its tracers reaching for him. He does not slow. He does not look back. He is a man driven by a singular purpose, a force of mercy that will not be stopped. He reaches the cliff's edge and collapses, the sergeant rolling off his back. He has made it. But as he reaches for the rope, the machine gun fire intensifies, chewing up the ground around him, the bullets striking the rock face with furious percussive impacts. He is pinned down at the one place that had been a gateway to life. The air splits apart with the rhythmic violence of the Nambu light machine gun. Bullets chip away at the rock face just inches from Desmond Doss's head, sending stone splinters flying like angry wasps. He flattens his body over the wounded sergeant, making himself a human shield, feeling the percussive impacts thudding into the earth around them. There is no escape. The sniper has him pinned, and the machine gunner is determined to finish the job. Below, the men of Company B have begun to lay down covering fire, the sharp cracks of their M1 Garens answering the Japanese chatter. But their angle is poor. They cannot suppress the heavily fortified enemy positions. Doss knows he has seconds, not minutes, Lying on his side, he works the rope, his fingers slick with blood and sweat, fumbling with the knots that have become so familiar over the long night. The sergeant is fading in and out of consciousness, his breath a shallow rattle. Doss secures the rope litter around the man's torso, checks it twice, and then, with a surge of desperate strength, pushes him over the edge. He plays out the rope, hand over burning hand, the friction tearing at his raw palms. Bullets continue to snap overhead, but he does not flinch. His entire universe is focused on that single length of hemp, the lifeline connecting the world of the living to the world of the dead. He feels the rope go slack. The last man is down. He collapses against the rock, his lungs heaving, his body utterly spent. For 12 hours he has been a solitary angel of mercy on this forsaken plateau. The official count would later estimate that he saved 75 men, 75 lives, 75 sons, husbands, and fathers who would return home because one unarmed man refused to leave them behind. It is a number that seems impossible, a feat of endurance and faith that defies the brutal logic of war. By subscribing, you help us ensure that the final count of his courage is never forgotten, and that the story of each life he touched continues to be told. The immediate threat remains. He is still trapped. As the American covering fire intensifies, he sees his chance. He scrambles away from the exposed cliff edge, diving into a nearby foxhole just as a fresh burst of machine gun fire stitches the ground where he had been lying. He huddles in the bottom of the hole, catching his breath, trying to will the strength back into his limbs. Sometime later, as the battle for the ridge resumes with a fresh American assault, Doss is still waiting for a chance to move. Then a dark object arcs through the air, landing in the foxhole with a soft thud. A grenade. Without a second to think, he kicks at it, trying to knock it out of the hole, but it detonates before his foot can connect. A blinding flash, a deafening roar, and a searing, white-hot pain. Shrapnel tears through his legs and hip. He is wounded, his own blood now staining the Okinawan soil. The medic has become the patient. With grim determination, he pulls out his last aid kit and begins to treat his own grievous injuries, his hands moving with the same methodical calm he offered to others. He is found there hours later by another combat medic who calls for litter bearers. As they carry him back toward the aid station, Doss spots another American soldier on the ground, his wounds clearly more severe. He orders the litter bearers to stop. He rolls off the stretcher, tells them to take the other man first, and waits his turn, lying wounded on the battlefield he had so long refused to abandon. Lying on the blood-soaked ground of Hacksaw Ridge, Desmond Doss watches the litter bearers carry the other wounded man away, their figures receding into the smoke and chaos of the renewed assault. For the first time in hours, he is a patient, not a medic. The shrapnel in his legs burns with a deep, throbbing agony. But he is alive, and he has done his work. He waits, his gaze fixed on the churned-up sky, listening to the familiar symphony of battle, the roar of flamethrowers, the crack of rifles, the crump of grenades. He has endured the unendurable, and rescue is coming. Then, another sharp crack, closer this time, and a violent, shocking impact slams into his left arm. You can feel the jolt as the sniper's 7.7mm round finds its mark, shattering the humerus bone just below his shoulder. The pain is a blinding, electric white, utterly eclipsing the wounds in his legs. His arm is now useless, a dead weight hanging from his shoulder. No litter bearers are in sight. The battle rages on, and in the confusion, he has been forgotten again. To remain here is to bleed out or to be found by a Japanese patrol. His ordeal is not over. He knows he cannot wait for help that may never come. With his one good arm, he begins to crawl. He pushes himself forward with his right hand and his less injured right leg, dragging his shattered limbs behind him. Every movement is a fresh wave of nausea and agony. He finds a discarded M1 Garand lying in the mud. An idea, born of desperation and a lifetime of self-reliance, forms in his mind. He cannot set the bone, but he can stabilize it. Awkwardly, painfully, he props the rifle stock against his broken arm, using his teeth and his one good hand to tighten the sling, fashioning a crude but effective splint. It is in these small, desperate actions, a field-expedient splint made from a rifle, that the true measure of a person is often found. Documenting these details is central to our mission, and your subscription ensures this history is preserved for future generations.